Thank you very much to everybody for coming. Just a little introduction for those who don't know me. My name is Jakob Steinberg. I'm a sales coach. I work mainly within the creative space, entrepreneurs, and small business owners. A lot of people, when they're growing their business, they're able to get to a 6-7 figure business on their own. They're good at what they do. They're passionate. But at some point along the way, they hit a glass ceiling. And I'm here to help you to break through that glass ceiling with the right mindset, techniques, schools, and tips. And the goal here is to help you to have confidence and clarity when reaching out to new people, as well as following up with others as well. Some of the people that I've helped in the past have been people that are pretty well known on LinkedIn and within the Jewish community, such as Chaya Fishman, Hoodie Bluch, and Hoodie Greenberger, just to name a couple. And a lot of the clients that I've had the pleasure of working with in the 5-6 figure realm have been able to grow their business by 50%. Those in the $100,000 realm, even by 150% in the first 60 to 90 days. And those solopreneurs, even higher with even over 200%. Without further ado, just to set an agenda of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the 6 steps of a discovery call and how to make sure that people stop ghosting you and making you chase them. We're going to go through the different stages of this discovery call. And we're going to have question and answer after each one. If people have any questions, they can feel free to unmute themselves, open their videos, and we'll go through those questions. And looking forward to getting into it together. So without further ado, just to give a high level of what the 6 steps of a discovery call look like. We're talking about number 1, the opener. Number 2, there's going to be open-ended questions. Then you're going to go into the context pitch. The hard questions is going to be step 4. Number 5 is the value, and making an ask is going to be number 6. And we're going to go through each one individually. So just from the beginning, when we start a discovery call, we want to make sure that we set out the agenda just like I did right now. A simple opener such as, hey, why are we here today? If someone has scheduled time on your calendar, if you've reached out to them and they're not necessarily sure what's going on, you could tell them right up front, this is the point of the call. This is what I'd like to accomplish today. How does that sound to you? And then just open the floor to them. Ask them a little bit about themselves. Try to get a good understanding of who they are so that you can start already moving into the process of the discovery call. Now, in essence, the discovery call, what we're really trying to do is get a good understanding of what's going on with the other person. And many times, creatives, entrepreneurs, small business owners struggle with really getting a good grasp of what's going on with the person they're speaking to. So the point of this, going through this discovery call, is not to just get basic information so you can send a proposal and hope it does some magic, but it's to really get a clear grasp and understanding of what's going on the other side of the screen or the other side of the phone, and really understand where they're coming from, what matters to them, what's going on their end. Now, the best way of doing that is to have them do, in the best case scenario, 90% of the talking, and you'll be able to do 10% of the talking. Even if it's a little more than that, that's fine. But you really want to be asking as many questions as possible, the right types of questions in the right way and at the right time. So right as we go into the opener, already we're starting that process by opening the floor to them and saying, hey, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Tell me more about your business. Why are we here on this call today? From there, we're going to go right into what we call the open-ended questions. Nothing too deep. We want to make sure the questions that you're asking don't have yes or no answers. That's the point of an open-ended question. A closed-ended question ends in yes, no. It doesn't have any opinions, thoughts, feelings, or anything like that to it. And over here, an open-ended question is going to be much deeper than that. I'm going to go even further into this, but this is really where you begin to understand more about your client on a surface level. And we're going to go deeper into how you can get to know them even deeper as we go through the call and later on in the call. But really, that's where we're going to start the process of understanding their pain points. Now, the reason that open-ended questions are so important is because it requires the person you're talking to pause, think, and reflect. They're going to have to give their feelings, their opinions, their ideas about a subject. And the control of the conversation is with the person asking the questions. I'm sure that all of us have called customer support at one point or another. And we all have had that feeling where someone says, hi, thanks so much for calling Amazon. How can I help you? They have now taken control of the call. And if you think back to the last time you had a call like that, you don't hang up when your problem is resolved. They say, is there anything else I can help you with? Right? So they're controlling the call all the way through till they quote unquote allow the conversation to end. And we follow through with that because they're the ones that are guiding the call. We want to make sure that the types of questions we're asking are the right ones. And a great example of that is when we walk into a high-end store, right? Let's say we went out to Brooks Brothers Outlet or something like that, or we went to Macy's or wherever it might be. And we go in a store and the person says, "Hey, thanks so much for coming in. How can I help you?" Right away, we go into what Josh Braun calls the zone of resistance. We're like, "No, I'm good. I really don't need any help." Now, if this person knew how far you drove and how long it took you to find parking, and they said, "Hey, wait a minute, I have a question for you. You drove about an hour plus to get here and you spent 20 minutes looking for a parking spot. You're really just looking? You don't have anything you're here for?" And it's a little funny if you think about it. But what if they had said when you came in, "Hey, I'm over here folding some shirts. If there's anything you need, just let me know." We're like, "Yeah, I'm looking for this in blue." Right. And the difference there is one person is inviting you in, the other person you feel like they're going to pitch you. They're on your case. Now, when we ask the right types of questions, people will open up to us, right? That's the power of the open-ended questions when done the right way. It's similar to when you have a follow-up question with someone. And open-ended questions start very, very specifically. They don't start with just any random words. They usually start with why and how when it comes to follow-up. But when it comes to, in general, the open-ended questions, they begin with words such as why, how, what, can you describe, tell me a little bit about, or what do you think about? Those are usually how good open-ended questions begin. And it's all about using the right wording that are going to make the other person feel comfortable, that you're not asking too personal of a question, especially at this point in the conversation where they don't necessarily know too much about you or what you do. And you're really just opening the door to getting to know them better and start building that relationship with them right from the beginning. People like when others put them on a pedestal, when others put them on a soapbox, giving them a chance to talk about themselves and really just give over what they're about and what are they excited about and what are they looking to do. So when we give them that opportunity, when we open that door for them, they start right away going into know, like, and trust, the three things that are absolutely necessary for someone to buy from you. They might know you, but if they don't like you and trust you, they're not going to buy from you. And same with all the other different options that you can go with in any type of mixing of those three. So you have to have all three for that. And one of the best ways of doing that is asking people about them. They automatically will start liking you because who doesn't like to talk about themselves? Now, before I go into the context pitch, does anybody have any questions for me when it comes to the open-ended questions themselves? Any specifics on that? Otherwise, I'm going to go into the context pitch, which is going to take a little bit more of our time. You could feel free to unmute yourselves or put something into the chat, open your videos, or I'll just go on to the next topic if no one jumps forward.
Oops.
Okay, great.
Wait.
Avi, you had a question?
Yeah. What is the first question to ask? Just to get them to, start opening up to you.
It's a great question. So it really depends on the circumstances of how they're in front of you, right? So if, let's say, someone's scheduled time in my calendar, I'm going to open with, "Hey, thanks so much for coming. Tell me a little bit about what's going on. Why are we here today?" I'm going to let them set the agenda of why I'm here. And right away, I'm already in that open-ended mode of asking them questions, which are going to enable them to start getting comfortable with saying why we're on the call. If I scheduled a time with them because I have something that I would like from them, so then I might say, "Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me." And then right from there, I'm able to move into, do you mind if I ask you some questions? And I can start right away asking, different questions that might be, on my mind of things that I need to find out in order to qualify this person and see whether or not we could be a good fit. Again, we're specifically talking here about a discovery call. We're not talking about a cold call, which is a completely different way of going about it. But in a discovery call specifically, I'm going to open with just real easy, getting to know them a little bit. Tell me a little bit more about what you do, stuff like that. Okay, great. So from the open-ended questions, the next stage number 3 is the context pitch. Now, this is an extremely important part of the call because at this point, you've probably spent about 5-7 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes, just letting them do the talking, which is fantastic. You want them to do as much talking as possible, as we said in the beginning. From this point, I need to give them a reason to listen to anything that I'm going to say later on in the call. Because at some point in this call, I'm going to have to give them a value and show them that I really know what I'm talking about and make them feel comfortable if I have any intention of them ever working with me. And the first step to doing that is the context pitch. It's where I'm going to be able to start that process of making sure that people are going to see the value I bring to the table. And there's 4 main parts to the context pitch: who you are, what you do, what makes you unique, and what are the impact and results that you get when you work with people. If you can name drop, that's even better. Now, the point here is that a lot of people know us from our presence online, whether it's our website, whether it's social media, or they know us from being around us within our community. But at the end of the day, they have a certain perception of you that might not be the perception you want them to have. So the best way to deal with that is giving them the perception that you want them to have about you, even though they know a little bit about you. And to do that, you have a very clear understanding of, hey, I'm a sales coach. This is what I do. When I first went into consulting, like I said right at the beginning, that 1.5 minute blurb, that's my context pitch. And the reason I do it at the beginning of every single webinar that I do is because I want people to have a clear understanding of the value that I'm going to bring to the table as we go into the conversation, so that they can actually open themselves up to be willing to hear, listen, and then implement the things they're going to learn on the webinar, whether I'm with another guest or whether I'm doing one myself. So the same goes for a discovery call. We need that the people we're speaking to should have a really good understanding of the value we bring to the table. And the best way to do that is to show them the impact, the results, the people you've worked with, and really make sure that they have a clear understanding of what it is that you do in as succinct way as possible. Now, I'm sure that a lot of people have tried to put some pitch together in some which way, shape, or form. The reason that this context pitch is built in the way that it is it's built off of a larger conversation, which is your story. And going into, how did you get to where you are today? What was something that you looked in the past and saw, hey, this is where I started seeing these steps, right? For me, I was 5 years old. I sold a secondhand pair of sunglasses to a classmate for $5. My parents made me give back the money, but my sales affinity started when I was really young. I got excited about, going into education at one point, use that natural sales affinity within that process as a natural teacher to be able to help youth and really give themselves an opportunity, and then ended up going into sales proper and made waves within the sales world and ended up being pushed into coaching and consulting. But for me, when I have that hindsight 2020 and see the story behind me, I'm able to really give over a clear understanding to someone else what it is that I do today and why I do that. So it's important when you're crafting your context pitch, try to look back, try to understand whether it's as a web developer that you were involved in the yearbook and realize that you're really good at putting everything where it belongs, whether it's in graphic design, that there's just that creative edge that you bring to the table that no one else dared to use. Whatever it is, try to look in the past to understand the deeper part of the story. What makes you you? What makes you unique? What is it about you that's going to be different than the person they spoke to maybe even 10 minutes before that's really officially selling the same thing that you do? And that's when we get into that context pitch, we have a clarity of that. You're able to give over a story of what it is that you do, why you do it, so that people have a clear understanding of what they're going to get when working with you. From there, we're going to end up going into the hard questions, which is going to take up even more time than this context pitch. This is a really big part, though, so I'm sure that there are plenty of people who have some questions here. I can't put the 4 parts into the chat just because it'll take too long, but again, I'll say them one more time, as we already have a question on that. Number 1, for those that want to write it down, the first thing is, who are you? Number 2, what do you do? Number 3, what makes you unique? So a bit maybe of a story, the way that I framed it. When I first went into consulting, this is the problem that I saw. I saw that, people were hitting a glass ceiling, and then I was able to help them by, doing XYZ, right? Again, it's supposed to be 1.5 minutes. You can maybe go to 2 minutes, no more than that. And then from there, you want to try to name drop if you can. That's a bonus. And the number 4, the biggest thing is the impact and results that people have seen from working with you. So if you can give that to people, if you can give them that data, that's really going to be where they see, oh, wow, this is someone who's really accomplished things in the past. I can if I had a dime for every time I've done a context pitch and someone went, oh, wow, I'd be a millionaire. Because when you can craft that context pitch to the point that someone goes, oh, wow, and they're awed or they're amazed at what you've accomplished based on what you've said, right away, they truly feel you can bring value to them. It's just a question of at what point in the conversation is it going to come out. Does anybody else have any other questions on this? You can get personal with it within your own context pitch. We can even try to get a little bit into implementation at this point, and then we'll move on to context pitch. I'm happy to give a couple of minutes for anyone who wants to try to be the lucky person in the class. Yes, Avi.
Anybody else want to ask questions? Because I'm the only one asking questions. Anybody else?
So far, you are the lucky one. So let's take it away, Avi. This is good.
Okay.
You've been quiet up until this point in the webinars.
Okay, how long did it take you to nail it down? Because you really do a good job in nailing it into very short, biteable sentences. Like,
it's a good question. Usually when I work with people one-on-one, it can take them even, a couple of sessions to get it, because people aren't used to this idea of using story as a way of catapulting them into a really good context pitch. Usually it's just, hey, I'm a web developer. This is how we help people. Are you interested in working with me? And it's just missing that oomph to it. So give yourself space, give yourself the time to look back, figure out what the progression of the story was. Anyone can see my own personal story on my LinkedIn bio, and you'll see that's what I tell people when they want to, understand how I fell into the coaching space. And that is the foundation of how I created my own context pitch. So give yourself that space to be willing to play with it and find someone who's willing to listen once you've created one, whether it could be your spouse, a friend, a colleague, a peer, and say, hey, I've been working on this. I want to get your feedback. Does this really give over to you what it is that I do? And just give them the context pitch and then say, okay, from that, can you tell me what is it that you think that I do? If they don't already know, or if they already know, so then ask them if you gave it over well within that 1.5, 2 minute space. I will point out, because this is important, Avi, a lot of people, when they do this for the first time, it's very helpful when you send yourself a voice note or you time yourself in order so that you can hear also the inflections and the way that your tonality is and how you're speaking when you're doing this, because it's going to be awkward the first couple of times. So allow yourself to send, a WhatsApp to yourself within, if you have it, you could send yourself a WhatsApp, listen over to it before you even do it with other people. But it could take a little bit of time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great questions, Avi. Keep it going. I'm loving this. Okay, so from the context pitch, we're then going to go into stage 4 of the 6 steps, which is the hard questions. Now, this is really where we start delving deep. Like I said earlier, questions are the key to a really good sales conversation. And again, we're not trying to sell anybody here. We're trying to help them by understanding who they are, where they're at, and meeting them there. So we could potentially see if we fit into the overall picture to help them to be more successful with whatever it is that they might be dealing with. So the point of asking the hard questions are more difficult questions that are going to delve deeper into their business, maybe their personal lives, depending on, what industry or service you might be offering. Questions such as, how is that affecting your bottom line? This that you said earlier, or what would it mean for you if this particular issue was solved? Those are really good places to start. But the 3 main points, and everyone can write these down, the 3 main things that we want to get out of the hard questions are, number 1, pinpointing where the pain is for the client. That's the first and most important thing. Number 2, what are their business goals? What is driving them? It's important. Many people get confused when I say this because they go, well, what does their long-term business goals have to do with me? Because ultimately, the answer to that is, if you can understand their overall goal of where they want to get to, this little piece of it is going to be an important factor in that. Otherwise, they wouldn't be talking to you, right? Everyone is trying to get to their ultimate goal. And if you could figure out how you fit into that goal, then you'll have a much bigger chance of being able to help this individual and potentially have them become a client of yours. And the third thing that we're going to be trying to find out is, why do they buy? What are the benefits they need in order to move forward with something? What are they looking for? that's going to enable them to be able to move into the next stage with you. So when we talk about hard questions, I want to delve into this a little bit deeper even. We spoke earlier about the way to start open-ended questions, and hard questions are just a deeper way of asking an open-ended question, something that might make someone more uncomfortable. Easy example, I had a conversation, more than one today, where it was with a potential client, and only really after I gave my context pitch did I feel that I had earned the right to ask them a harder question, such as, can you tell me a little bit about what was your annual revenue this past year? Now, that's a pretty personal question for many people, rightfully so. Who are you to ask me such a personal question? But when I've earned the right by showing them within my context pitch that I know what I'm talking about, I have value to bring, and I'm here to help them, they're an open book. I have yet to have someone who really pushed back on that question. If it happened, it was like 1 out of the 50 plus people that have moved forward with me. Forget all the countless people that I've had the pleasure of talking to and serving in just one small one-on-one 30-minute strategy calls. But they'll open up because you've earned that right. So you have the ability to delve deep, and you must if you want to really help them. So you can ask questions if, when you're in follow-up stage, what is holding you back from moving forward? Just, I want to give a couple of different examples to give you everyone here a chance to figure out how they can start with this process. You could talk to them about, can you tell me any concerns or objections you have about the product or service? Have you ever used such a product or service before? Are there any alternatives that you're considering? You can even ask them, a lot of people get concerned when it comes to figuring out who the decision maker is. So it's, that's a very important question to ask. So you can ask them about, as opposed to who the decision maker is, you ask them about that process. So can you tell me more about your decision-making process? Is a really softer way of asking that question to get a clear understanding of how they go through that and whether they're the person you need to talk to, or maybe you need to loop someone else in. Finding out what their plan is in terms of how fast do they need to move forward with this? How quickly do they need to make a decision? These are all really good places to start. I don't suggest using the wording from ChatGPT, but you can go into ChatGPT, give it a basic synopsis of what you do, and ask it to give you some hard questions that'll bring out the 3 things that I mentioned earlier, right? So that's, again, the pinpointing where the pain is, getting the business goals and understanding what drives them, and understanding why do they buy, what are the benefits they need in what they're looking for. And it should give you some pretty decent questions that you can then level up, either through continuing through prompts or just reframing them yourself to really get to the places that you want. If you're looking for specific questions into what are the benefits that people are looking for, ask it for that. Don't go too general. ChatGPT or any of these AIs, they really need specifics. But it could just as well be what prompted you to start looking for a product or service like this, or what specific problem or need do you hope this will solve for you? These are just easy ways of, going through that process. Does anybody have any further questions on hard questions? Otherwise, we'll continue to move forward within the process of the 6 steps. You can put it in the chat if you're uncomfortable unmuting yourself, or opening your camera, or you can just jump in and ask some questions, like we've had one person doing so far. Avi, you could feel free to jump in if you want. Okay, seems like this one was pretty straightforward. Again, you can interrupt me before I start the next one. Otherwise, we'll wait till after. The next thing we're going to go into is value, right? So at this point in the call, we have a pretty good understanding of who we're talking to, right? We've gone through a good opener that warmed the conversation. It was inviting to them. We asked some open-ended questions to get to know the person we're talking to a little bit better, having a better understanding of their business, what they're looking for potentially. We've given them a context pitch, which then earned us the ability to ask hard questions, which enabled us now to have a really good understanding, hopefully, of the pain points they're going through, their goals, and what they're looking for, what benefits they need in what they're trying to buy. And at this point, we've gathered all this information, and now we provide value. And to do that, this is where we're going to do what's called mirroring and connecting the pain points to build potential urgency. We're going to give them some free ideas they might be able to do on their own. Again, depending on the industry you're in, that could work really well. You could find my information here, or you can look up information there. And if you want, these are some of the things I think that you can do that'll help you to continue to move forward. Now, it's extremely important at this stage to actually provide real solid value. You don't want to just be fluffing around, and you don't want to just go straight into, hey, you should really work with me, right? Those are not the best ways of providing value necessarily. Again, it depends on what industry you're in and what you're talking about, right? So many people, for an example, if someone came to you to buy a website, you could tell them, hey, you can go, build your own website on Wix, but, these are the downsides to that. Most people within the website space are not going to do that, and rightfully so, right? Especially those that are more boutique. There's no reason for you to go and say, hey, you should do this on your own, right? Now, what you could do is you can send them to understand from an educational perspective why these things are important. That is a very important place to provide value that a lot of people forget about. They think, oh, if I have nothing free to offer them, then I'm just going to start selling them. I'm just going to start talking to them about what it is that I do and why I'm the best thing since sliced bread. But in reality, educating them is actually one of the best things you can do for providing value. Giving them a deeper understanding. A client of mine just did this the other day. They were on a call with someone, and in all honesty, this person had spoken to about, I think if I understood correctly, 3 or 4 different people who create websites. And not once did he really come out with a clear understanding of why it was important for him to have a website other than just existing. He's like, when I have enough money that I want to, put myself a little bit more out there, I'll build a website. But in all honesty, he didn't really understand it until my client took the time to educate him on what he understood and the way that he did it in his own business, how to build a really good website. And how, the story comes out from doing so, for what your client is going through, how you're going to be able to potentially help them. And this person at the end of the call said, I really valued our conversation today because you really gave me a clear understanding of why this is something that's important. And up until this point, even though I'd spoken to so many others, I didn't get that. So it's important to educate within this part of it. But also when you're going to give them an understanding of how you can help them, that's going to happen within this part right here. So you're going to tell them what you can do for them from your expertise and your authority, why it is you think that that's what you should be doing. And if possible, at this point, you really should have enough information to a certain degree create an urgency for them. In sales, one of the things that can be done to do that is what we call the cost of inaction. Giving them a clear understanding of what is this costing them, not only if they're going to move forward with you, but if they don't move forward with you, right? An easy example, one of my clients was speaking with their own potential client about a website, about branding. And they were speaking to them back and forth, and the person said, oh, I don't need to rebrand, but, I feel like I don't necessarily have the look that I want. Okay, so let's delve into that a little for a second. You really don't need to, and it's not costing you anything, but, well, that's a really big, potential there. What's actually happening? So easy way to going down that rabbit hole. And this is an important piece of the discovery calls, going down those rabbit holes, delving deeper into the conversation. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. So when you speak to people, does everybody move forward with you? Well, no, of course not. I speak, how many people are you speaking to every single month? Well, between 10 to 15 people every single month. Okay, fantastic. And out of those 10, 15, how many are moving forward? I'd say about 5 or even 7, let's say, if we want to make it really juicy, right? Oh, wow, fantastic. That's really good. So if my math is correct, there's about 7 to 8 people that are not moving forward with you. Do you know why? And all of a sudden, from this conversation, we can find out that 3 people, they're just fishing. They're not really so excited and they're not really so interested. It's not the right time for them. But there are at least 3 people that aren't moving forward because their brand wasn't up to par. The reason that they thought, oh, I just want to look with the times, was actually costing them business. Now, a further question, one question will reveal the cost of inaction. If you don't mind me asking, how much is your average client? Oh, my average client's about $10,000. So we're talking now about a $30,000 cost of inaction. By you not having a really good brand, that is the reason these people aren't moving forward. you're potentially losing $30,000 every single month. Does that sound right? And all of a sudden, the person on the other side of the line has this light bulb moment when they realize, oh my goodness, I could potentially be losing or not getting $30,000 a month because my brand is not where it needs to be. And this is extremely important within how people look at your company, why they might want to move forward with you. It works, it's extremely important in the real estate space for people who are looking for investors and all these different things. And all of a sudden, there's this light bulb moment for them. And that's a really important way of showing them. Again, we're not trying to manipulate or even ethically persuade, as some people will call it. We're trying to help them to realize what's really going on. A lot of times people think that they have one problem when in reality they have a completely different problem that they don't even realize. And only through you asking these deep questions will they get to that point. This person thought that she just, it was like, I need a new, pair of shoes. And in reality, she needed a whole new, wardrobe redone. And it was really hurting the way that they were coming across. So it's extremely important to go down that rabbit hole together with the clients and really get a clear sense of what's going on and where are they holding. Now, before I ask if anybody has any questions on this, there's one other very important part to this. A lot of people could get the wrong understanding when it comes to this part of it. Again, I've said at least twice that we're not selling people in this way. We're not trying to get someone to move forward with you. What we are trying to do is help them to have an understanding of, number one, the value you provide, but also, and maybe even more important, what do they really need, right? Like I said, many people think that they need one thing coming into these discovery calls, depending on what you do, and they come out on the other end understanding they need something completely different. I just need a listing on Amazon, and they really need a whole rebrand. And they don't realize that until you help them. It's important to not try to go into the conversation thinking about getting a sale, right? That goes into mindset, which we're not really going to be able to properly go through on this call. But I do want to at least point out that the biggest thing that you can do for yourself and for your clients is to have a mindset of service, coming into a call to serve, not to sell, not to try to get a commission. People can smell it a mile away when you have what we call in the sales world, salespeople, commission breath. And nobody wants to have that, like we said in the beginning call, that zone of resistance. Oh no, a pitch is coming. Nobody wants that. They want to be invited in. They want to feel like you care about them, and it needs to be genuine. You can't fake it. If you don't care, they will feel that. If you're just trying to make a buck, they will feel that. So if you can take that step back, and if you can really be there to serve them, to really be there to help them to take that step forward in their lives, and that might mean using your service, and it might mean that you send them to someone else. Happened to me in a call today. Someone came to me. I thought they were here for sales coaching. At the end of the day, they needed something completely different. I said, you need a business coach. And I gave them 4 different people they should talk to for her specific, what her needs were. And it's extremely important when you're there for service. It's a whole different conversation. So it's important to mention that, especially at this point in the call, you need to have that, front and center when you're talking to people. Does anybody have any questions when it comes to providing value? Otherwise, we'll go into making an ask, which is, I'm sure, something that, at least one person will have a question about. But does anybody have any questions on providing value, how to do that in the right way, et cetera?
What if the potential client doesn't really know what they're missing out on? They don't know specifics. They don't know how much money they're making. They don't know how much money they could be making. And they're just lost. And they reached out to because they know they probably should do something. They don't know why, but yeah.
It's a great question. A lot of people within specific industries, there are a variety of reasons that could be the source of their woes in terms of why they're not being successful. And as someone who's the authority and the expert in your field, you do have at least a basic understanding of what some of those things could be. So what you could do is you can try to guide them into understanding that, right? I'll never forget when I was younger, I went to a financial consultant together with my wife to, get a better grasp of our financials and how to do certain things. And he would ask a question, okay, how much do you guys spend on clothing for the kids? And we're like, I have no idea. I'm the guy. I just, here's a credit card. And she's like, I don't know. And it wasn't until, okay, let's say you did know. And all of a sudden, like answers started coming out. And I'm like, I understand. 10 seconds ago, you said you didn't know. Now you know. So, well, if you did know, right? So there's ways also of subconsciously helping them to come up with the answers that they might really know, but they're afraid to say out loud. But there's also just, many times what the different reasons around it could be, and you can help guide them through that as well. I hope that answers your question. We have a question here in the comments. Sometimes I find myself giving too much value on my discovery call. You're not alone. And it turns into free consultations. How can I share some ideas and then suggest in a diplomatic way that they arrange a consultation in order to continue? So you are definitely not alone in this. There are many people that suffer from being very nice, and it's a good thing. The best thing that you can do for someone is you can try to remember that you do this, and you could even keep a paper on your computer, on your desk, in front of you, wherever you're having these conversations, and you can try to give them a certain amount of value and then stop yourself a couple of minutes in, right? If you're having a 30-minute call with people, you shouldn't really have enough time to give them a full-blown consultation. Unless you're having 45-minute or even an hour-long conversation with them, and then potentially you could be giving them all that information. So what you might want to do is try to limit the amount of time that you're giving this value part for. You can even time it. Just type into Google timer. When it gets to your point that you want to talk about value, click start. And when you get to a certain amount of time, stop yourself. And you don't just stop short, but what you can do is you can make sure that you slowly ease off and say, listen, if you want to talk more about this, I also offer consultations. And we can schedule one of those. This is what that looks like. And I think that there's a lot of value that I can offer you. But in the short amount of time that we have now, I think that, I can't really go that much farther into it. I think that's a very diplomatic way of stopping yourself and dealing with it in a way that they're going to be comfortable with. You can listen back to the recording. We should be about 40 minutes in if you want to try to find that in the recording. Does anybody else have any other questions? So far, we've had 2 really great questions. Okay. Avi, go for it.
Thanks. Does everybody should have a different length on the discovery call, right? I mean, depending on the industry they are in?
Yeah, so lots of people might disagree with me on this one. I personally feel that everyone needs to figure out what's the right amount of time for them. Whether it's, I know people that have a 15-minute option. I know people that have a 30-minute option, those that have 45-minute options. There aren't that many that on a discovery call will do an hour, but it really depends on how far along your process these people are. So there are a couple of people I know that even will do an hour discovery call with people because they've gotten so far in the process that it's almost an onboarding at that stage. And it's really just the technicalities of getting all the details to make sure that you're a good fit. So you really do need to delve into how long do I need? And you'll figure this out as time goes along. If you're, I'm sure you've been doing this for some time, but you could start off with, a 30-minute consultation. I think that's a really nice round number. And you'll see if it takes a little longer. Don't schedule anything immediately after. Give yourself some breathing space of about 15, 20, even 30 minutes and see how long does it really take me? And to make sure that, again, a lot of people, just like the question we just had was, providing too much value. So make sure that you don't go too far into that rabbit hole of trying to provide value where all of a sudden you're giving everything away. But
one question, sorry to overdo it.
Go ahead.
But after you get to the end of that discovery call, you want to ask yourself, did I get the information that I needed in the discovery call?
Correct. You always want to do a debrief. And I'm going to get to that after I speak about the making an ask.
Did I build trust with that client? Did I
exactly.
Did I get their pinpoints, their pain points? Right. What would be like 3 questions you would have to ask yourself to make sure that you really got the information out of the discovery call?
So it's a really good question. When it comes to a debrief, some of the questions you can ask yourself are, and I am going to talk about this in another couple of minutes.
Right. Peter, right.
No, but just some of the questions, just to make sure, in case you need to go, some of the questions you can ask yourself are, did I build rapport and a relationship with the person that I was speaking to? Did I sell too much to them, or was I really inviting them into my space and showing them the value? Did I give over clearly what it is that I do and the value that they I provide to the people that I work with, right? Just 3 easy questions that are actually quite deep if you take the time to think about them. Did I talk too much? Easy question. That's a really difficult question for yourself. Again, as people who are in sales, we should really ideally be doing 90% of the listening and 10% talking. Listening is a lost art form. Most people struggle. They hear, which means it goes in one ear, out the other. And true listening takes a nice good pit stop in the middle where we process the information. So did I listen enough? Did I talk too much? Did I just get too into, and too excited about what it is that I do? Did I took the whole conversation on this massive tangent? Did I follow the questions that I wanted to do, right? Ultimately, and the best case scenario from this webinar is you can create your own discovery call questionnaire of the different things you want to do, right? Setting the agenda. What are some open-ended questions I want to ask? What's my context pitch? Asking, the hard questions that I want to ask, providing value, having a couple of pointers there, and then making that ask. The best case scenario is you can look over that sheet afterwards with its filled in answers, and you can go, did I ask everything I was supposed to, or did I go into la la land in the middle of this conversation, right? So it's actually a fantastic question, and you saved me time at the end that I would have had to go through it anyways.
Well, thanks for the answer.
100%. Does anybody else want to jump in before I go into the last part of the discovery call?
What do you mean by giving too much value over?
Okay, so it's a very good question. A lot of people within the service-based industry specifically, a lot of what they do is information. It's understanding what it is that you need to do and how you need to go about doing that. So if you give too much of the secret sauce, I guess we can call it, they don't need you to a certain degree. Again, the technical aspects of it, how to do it the best. But if you give them enough information, there are plenty of people that can go and just do things on their own. And I myself have been a pretty good example of that from people on LinkedIn, right? There are plenty of people within the sales space. I'm a sales coach. These people, that I look up to within the sales coaching space, I'll follow their information and I take a lot of what they give over and I repurpose it into the own way that I do sales. And I'm able to give that over to my own clients. Wow, that was a really good thought. I really like the way that they put that. Right. I mentioned earlier the zone of resistance, and I mentioned Josh Braun. He's someone I follow on LinkedIn. Amazing when it comes to sales. I say over some of his stuff when I go over with my clients, and I say Josh Braun, he speaks about this, or Marcus Chan or Dale Dupree. These are just some of the people that I follow on LinkedIn, and they give a lot of value on the platform as I try to do myself. And if you're far enough along within your process, you could take that stuff and you can, repurpose it to be your own. So when people say I'm giving too much value, a lot of times they're saying everything that needs to be done in order to be able to do it yourself, or they're just telling them everything that they would do for them. And then they can take that information and go to someone else and say, hey, this is what I want you to do for me because I got it from someone who charges 7 times more than you, but I want you to do it because I don't want to pay those numbers because I think you'll be able to do just as good of a job. Even though in reality, they'll usually go back to the first person in many cases and say, yeah, I kind of shot myself in the foot. But that's the idea when people are saying that. Okay, so making an ask. The end of every good discovery call or even a networking call has to have an ask to it. I cannot tell you how many times I've spoken to clients who have said, yeah, I had this great networking call, this great discovery call. And then at the end, I was like, what were we doing on the call? And this obvious question is, well, was there an ask at the end? Did you end the conversation with something that was going to be the next steps, right? Are they interested in working with you? What can you do for them? Is there an introduction if you're talking about a networking call? There needs to be some sort of ending to it that's going to provide a further step. Otherwise, you wasted your entire 30, 40, an hour long of how that discovery call was. So ending the conversation with an ask of something you can do for them, they can do for you, is extremely important. Now, many people, when they hear this, they get a little stuck in the idea of, well, how do I ask them in the right way of whether or not they want to use my services? Like, I don't want to be selling to them, right? That's the whole reason I'm listening to this webinar is I don't want to feel salesy, but I want to make sure that they're not going to ghost me and make me chase them. So how do I do that? So there's a couple of important things to make sure that you get as you end a discovery call. First and foremost, you can just lean into it and say, based on what we've said today, what do you think next step should be? You're putting the ball in their court. It's an easy way of handing the ball to them and saying, we've covered a lot today. You got a tremendous amount of value. I've told you how I can help you. What should our next step be? Where do we go from here? Let them take charge and tell you where they're holding. Again, if you're not trying to sell them or you're trying to be of service, let them tell you where they're holding. Don't try to force anything, right? That's the easiest way of going into it. You could also just ask them right out, based on what we've discussed today, do you think we might be a good fit for us to help you with this project that you want to take care of? So those are like just two easy ways of being able to ask that difficult question. Now, with that in mind, in ending any discovery call, especially if you do think that you can be a good resource for them, please, for everything that's holy, please ask them for the follow-up on the call. Don't wait till afterwards to cry and say, oh, I don't know when I'm supposed to follow up with them, right? Ask them, so when should I get back to you on this? Or when, again, try not to use touch base, follow up, or any of these other, words that are, very within the sales space. When can I get back in touch with you in order to get some feedback on what your thoughts are on this? Feedback is a customer service word. It's a very good word for when you want to follow up with them in a way that's not going to make them feel like you're trying to sell them, right? So make sure to ask them as you end the call, when's the next time that I should reach out to you so I can get some feedback on what we're going to do here? Because they said, I need some time to think about it. Okay, that's fantastic. I encourage you to think about it. Here's a very important point. What is it that you need to think about? I'm just curious, right? You have no idea if they don't tell you, right? So ask them, what is it that you need to think about? And
It's expensive.
That's one thing that they might say. Classic answer, right? So then you're going to go down the route of, what does it mean that it's expensive? And okay, I've heard this before. I've never heard this before. It depends on the industry that you're in. What exactly would be the best answer for that? I actually made a post about this the other day. An easy answer to that is, no one's ever asked me to charge less, but if you want, I could charge more, right? What does it mean it's expensive, right?
Compared to what?
Compared to what, right?
Say the word compare, yeah.
Compared to what? You can ask them, just simple questions about what's going on. And a lot of times it's really not an objection. It's really a deflection because they're testing the waters, right? So I really don't want to go into, this conversation. I've made a post about it recently and in the past. You can definitely look those up. I think it was even a week ago or so. You could find that on LinkedIn. But again, when it comes to asking for that follow-up, try to get as granular with it as you could. So that you can have a clear understanding of when you're going to follow up and even a time if possible, if they're open to that. If they're not willing to give that, okay, no problem. Does it make sense that I should, get back in touch with you in about a week or so, just to hear, where you're holding at that point? Yeah, sure. No problem. We do have a question here in terms of wouldn't asking them why they need to think about it, send them into their zone of resistance. It really could, it really depends on how you ask the question, right? So one of the posts that I made leading up to this webinar was you have to ask the right questions in the right way and at the right time. Asking the question in the right way is extremely important, especially right here and right now. When someone says to me, I need to think about it, I can just leave it alone and have no clue what they need to think about. And it might be that they really don't have anything to think about. I'm going to get to that in a second. And it could be that they actually do have something that's important to think about. But if I don't ask them about it, I won't know, right? So the way to ask it is a very subtle question of, first of all, I definitely think it's a great idea. You should for sure think about it. I wouldn't want you to jump into anything. Validating their sense of the fact that they need to think about it. Don't just jump on them. Validate it. Empathize with them. And I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, permission-based, and I'm just curious, what is it that you need to think about, right? Very soft, very just, I'm curious. Well, as of right now, and they're going to open up a little bit to you because they've done that already in this phone call. They trust you at this point. So they'll tell you a little bit, hopefully, about what it is that they think they need to think about. One of my favorite things that I saw when I came to this was when you actually go down this rabbit hole in the correct way, you can come out with them realizing, depending on how you do your discovery calls, if you don't mind me asking, what is it that you need to think about? I understood earlier in the call that you had mentioned, we went over the price and you felt that, was something that made sense to you and you were able to handle that. We also discussed this aspect and these are the features that you're looking for. Let's say in SaaS, this works really well. What else is that you need to think about? And all of a sudden they go, oh yeah, you're right. Like we have really covered all the different points of what it is that I would think about. Okay, so is there a specific reason you don't want to move forward today? Right now, again, it's very specific and it's not going to happen always. I've seen this work really well within SaaS, but it's software as a service for those who don't know what that stands for. But you need to be careful when doing this because again, it could very easily come across in the wrong way if you're too pushy with it. But allow yourself to go down that rabbit hole a little bit with them if they're open to doing it, so you can get a really good understanding of what's actually going on their side. Great question. Does anybody else have any questions on this before I, close up the webinar? Okay, fantastic. So first of all, thank you very much to everyone who came. I think this was really fantastic. We definitely learned a lot together. There were some fantastic questions from people in the audience. I would strongly suggest, as I do at the end of every webinar, try to write something down that you really took out of today that you're going to put into implementation. Something that you're going to try, something small so that you actually start those baby steps into making sure that you're going to be moving yourself forward in that personal development for your business so you can get to the next stage. If you love what we did on today's webinar, we are doing this officially. It's a 12-week series. It's seemingly going to be longer than that, where every single week we're taking something different, something timely, something interesting from different parts of, how we're able to do sales and enhance our methodologies that you can add to your skill set of your toolbox that you use. For those that are interested, we have a mastermind where we follow a 12-week structure, step-by-step, along a journey every single week to a very specific outcome with the main challenges that people face when they're going into building their business, either in the beginning or in the middle of their journey. You could feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to put my contact information on WhatsApp, as well as if you just want to schedule a 30-minute free strategy session, you can feel free to do so as well. For those that are interested, the Genesis Mastermind is that structured. We do go into the 6 steps of a discovery call, and we go into each aspect in and of itself and give worksheets and documentation as well to help you to really get even better at that. Thank you again for everyone who came. Looking forward to speaking to some of you either in WhatsApp or on a call together. Have a great rest of your day. Sorry, Yehuda, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Yaakov. Appreciate it.
100%. My pleasure. Hatzlacha to everybody. Take care.